Hello, everyone, and hopefully, wherever you are in the world, you are having a phenomenal day. I'm coming back to you with regard to this book, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. Now, I facilitate a mastermind in a private group, but wanted to come here and just give you a little snippet of what we talked about and share with you the book that I'm now starting to cover. So, in the month of May, it's Monday, so I typically facilitate the calls every Monday. But because the last Monday of May is Memorial Day, I decided not to so that people can just be with their families. And plus, people are just kind of like not in work mode that day for the most part. So, wanted to come here and just give you a little bit of the last of what I'm talking about with regard to this book, Dare to Lead. Fantastic book, fantastic book. And not only the book itself, she also, if you go to BreneBrown.com, she has resources. She has a workbook. If you wanted to do this book for yourself or have yourself a little small group within your office, please take advantage. She's done a lot of research, a lot of work to help you and just, I want to say, the world with regard to uh, having those tough conversations and being vulnerable and really knowing how to communicate in a way so that you can uh, have that trust factor within your organization, within your team. But it really comes down to, the being vulnerable, really. And it's not easy. Like when she did the TEDx talk about uh, shame, I believe it was about shame. That's not what she set out to do. She set out as she was doing her research for something else. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but and that's what came up. So, with regard to Dare to Lead, here she is talking about vulnerability once again, because it's really, really important, especially when it comes to leadership. There's a way to do it. So, you build trust within your team and for them to be able to feel safe enough to be vulnerable within the group or the team or the organization. So, Dare to Lead. This is part four. And there are four parts. The first part was rumbling with vulnerability, and there were different sections. There was the moment and the myths, the call to courage, armory, shame and empathy, curiosity and grounded confidence. Part two is she talked about living into our values. That was a really good one. Part three was braving trust. So the last call that I had when I facilitated was parts two and three, living into our values and braving trust. So I combined those two because we're only doing three, the month of May. Uh, and then part four, the last part, is what I'm going to just quickly go over and just share that with you today. And that is learning to rise. So, with regard to books, I do go through a book a month, and it's difficult to go through every single chapter, every single section. So, what I do is I just try to extrapolate the best of, come up with some questions, and it's really to have a mastermind to have a discussion and go back and forth with my group. So that's why there's a handful of questions. So let me just go to my notes quickly. So here's one of the first questions that I asked, and it's how do you interpret Brene Brown's concept of rising strong in the context of leadership? And can you provide an example of a time you had to rise strong in your professional life? Now, think about that question for you. One came to me like, sometimes you have to really dig deep and because there could be multiple times that you had to rise strong in your team, in your organization, but maybe one really pops up right away for you. So what is that? What was that time for you? Think about that. And then, but how do you interpret her concept of rising strong in the concept of leadership? And one thing that she does say is write down what you need, especially as a leader. And when you write down what you need within your organization, from your team, from your higher ups, you know, because there's levels. What is it that you need as a leader in your organization? And write it down, because this can become kind of like a playbook for you. And she says, writing down what you need as a leader can become a playbook to expect familiar lessons, stories, tools, and examples, etc. So she talked about that. Let me see if I can find something for you really fast. I didn't write down the pages. Um, and I don't want to take time scrambling through this. But rising strong as a leader is not always easy, especially in this day and age where, you know, social media plays a big factor in influencing people's behaviors and habits and their thought process of things. But when you can have a really uh, communication with your people in a way that they feel heard, they feel seen, there's a sense of they feel safe, and that doesn't come right away. That comes with time. And as a leader, you have to show that, because you can be a leader, you can be vulnerable, you can be strong, you can be all the things, and not feel as if you're letting go a part of that leadership role. People want to know that you're like them. You have a family, there's things going on in your life, but there are standards and rules that you have to abide by. And when things are crossed, then they need to be addressed. Um, so let's see here. Uh, okay. Okay. So mm, my eye just went here, so I'll just talk about this with regard to millennials. She says, today, with millennials making up 35% of the American labor force, sorry, with the lighting, which is the largest represented generation, teaching how to embrace failure as a learning opportunity is even more important. She says, I've been in the university classroom for 20 years, and I've observed that the resilience and bounce of some students have decreased, while the exposure to trauma for other students has increased. On the one hand, we were and are constantly intervening, constantly fixing, constantly helping some kids. As the head of my son's school said, quote, many parents have gone from helicopter parents to lawnmower parents. Instead of preparing the child for the path, we've prepared the path for the child. That's definitely not courage building. So even as a leader, okay, this little segment that my eye was just drawn to is about parenting. And I'm actually going to speak at a conference this coming Saturday, May 25th, 26th, and it's the Online Business Mindset Mania. The group is Ladies of Leadership Bomb Global, which is building a leadership mindset. And the subject is social influence, and I'm choosing to discuss the influence as a parent that we have on children. So that was interesting. But yeah, it's you know, and even as a leader in our organization, it's about allowing them, your people, whether they are in their 20s, 30s, or 40s, allowing them to err, but giving them the space to do that, but also being a leader in the sense that, you know, you speak to them and have those conversations that are sometimes not easy and but needed. And sometimes, as much as a lot of people seem to have it all together, they know what they're doing, they need structure, um they need you to show them the way, but they also need you to speak to them in a way that is professional, constructive, and I want to say loving, but loving, when I say loving, it's more like coming from an empathetic, compassionate way, but you still have to be strong. So there's a fine line, but it's there's a fine line, but you can do it. And a lot of people have it, and it can be learned. It's a skill that can absolutely be learned. So let's see. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next question. So again, this is just kind of like just touching on some of the things that I spoke to with my mastermind earlier today. So the second question is Brene emphasizes the importance of leaning into vulnerability to develop courage. How can leaders create a culture that supports vulnerability within their teams? Now, I just have a couple of notes and I'll just mention it here. At the beginning of the book, she mentions how she didn't set out, this is what I was mentioning before, she didn't set out to study shame, but it came about when the need to understand how shame can unravel connection in a split second. And then also, speaking of leaders creating a culture of courage by leaning into vulnerability, Brene says vulnerability is the cornerstone of courage building, and without it, we lose creativity or innovation. And page 43, if you have the book, it says here, this is the third paragraph, adaptability to change. Hard conversations, feedback, problem solving, ethical decision making, recognition, resilience, and all of the other skills that underpin daring leadership are born of vulnerability. Again, so important to foreclose on vulnerability and our emotional life out of fear that the costs will be too high is to walk away from the very thing that gives purpose and meaning to living. And I'll end here as the neuroscientist Antonio Damasio reminds us, quote, we are not necessarily thinking machines, we are feeling machines that think. So let's move on to the next question. How can leaders build and sustain trust within their teams, especially in high stakes or high pressure environments? So here there's a couple of spots. So page 223, she says here, get specific. Rather than rumbling generally about trustworthiness and using the word trust, we need to point to specific behaviors. We need to be able to identify exactly what the breach lies, where the breach lies, and then speak to it. The more exact we can be, the more likely it is that people can hear us, that we can give feedback on behavior and stay away from character, and that we can support real change. So again, specificity is key when there's something amiss, you know. When we speak generally, then it allows individuals to conjure up a story in their minds of what could be, what maybe was said or inferred or insinuated. When you get really, really specific, then you can really solve the problem. And it allows others to go, oh, okay, I know exactly what you mean or what you're saying. Or they can ask questions regarding what the specificity is, and you can really stick to the root cause, the specific problem. So I think that's really important. And then on page 224, let me see, I'm looking at my notes. Okay. To get specific, our team dug into trust and identified 7 behaviors that make up the anatomy of trust. She says she came up with the acronym BRAVING. So B for boundaries. You respect my boundaries, and when you're not clear about what's okay and not okay, you ask. You're willing to say no. Reliability, R. You do what you say you'll do. At work, this means staying aware of your competencies and limitations so you don't overcompromise and are able to deliver on the commitments and balance competing priorities. A, accountability. You own your mistakes, apologize, and make amends. This is so important. It's just taking responsibility. V, vault. You don't share information or experiences that are not yours to share. I'm going to say that again. You do not share information or experiences that are not yours to share. I need to know that my confidences are kept and that you're not sharing with me any information about other people that should be confidential. So you may not share information or an experience about a person, but maybe you share to that person about someone else. There's a lack of trust there just by you doing that. So it's about integrity as well. So that is the V in vault, or V, vault, in braving. I, integrity. You choose courage over comfort. You choose what is right over what is fun, fast, or easy. And you choose to practice your values rather than simply professing them. N, non-judgment. I can ask for what I need, and you can ask for what you need. We can talk about how we feel without judgment. We can ask each other for help without judgment. Love that. And then G in braving is generosity. You extend the most generous interpretation possible to the intentions, words, and actions of others. So that's so fantastic. So that is the acronym she gave for braving. And last question is, so Brene Brown talks about the necessity of having tough conversations and giving and receiving feedback. What strategies, so here's a question for you to think about. What strategies can leaders use to ensure these conversations are productive and foster growth? Okay, so my notes. I have page 227 if you have the book and you want to follow along. Okay. Ah, all right, so 227, last paragraph. One of the best tools for putting these new skills. Now, the new skills is regarding to the acronym braving. So again, boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. So one of the best tools for putting these new skills and tools into practice is finding an integrity partner. So let me read the question again for you. So she talks about the necessity of having tough conversations, giving and receiving feedback. And so I'm asking what strategies leaders can use to ensure that these conversations are productive and foster growth. So I just found this section. There's a lot to unpack in this book with regard to even just that question, but I just honed in right here. One of the best tools for putting these new skills, one of the best tools for putting these skills and tools into practice is finding an integrity partner, someone at work who can check in with, that you can check in with to make sure we're acting in integrity. This should be someone we can talk to when we're questioning how we showed up in a recent exchange, or if we want to role play a hard conversation. That's really important. She says, I have two integrity partners at work and we role play, circle back, and practice together on a daily basis. Building courage with a partner or in a team is more powerful than doing it alone. I mean, think about it. Let's say you're just practicing delivering a speech. Sure, you could practice on your own, but when you're in front of a crowd or people are asking questions, or there's rumblings in the background, kind of it can throw you off. But if you're practicing with someone and let's say those things come up, you can better handle it. I know that's not exactly the right example, but it's the one that just came to mind. So let's see. I'll end with this. Asking for help is a power move. It's a sign of strength to ask and a sign of strength to fight off judgment when other people raise their hands. It reflects a self-awareness that is an essential element in braving trust. So that, my friends, is me covering Dare to Lead by Brene Brown in 3 weeks. I'm going to do this more often. The next book that I'm going to cover in the month of June here in 2024 is Why We Buy by Sherry Tree. And it's the buying behavior of individuals. And for those of you who have small businesses, doesn't even have to be small business or entrepreneur. It could be a parent or anything. Just knowing the behaviors. And yes, there are the personality tests. This is a little different, and I'm excited to dive deep, and I'm excited to share it with you. So stay tuned. And any questions, um, I look forward to seeing them and answering them. So until then, have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.